Okay, thank you for joining me, everyone. Welcome to the program. Allum Bokhari is here. I had to go live on the very network that is censoring many of us, that being my good friends over at YouTube. Allum, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Charles. Good to be back.
So, your new book is coming out very soon, and it certainly is prescient and current in terms of what's going on right now with big social networking censorship. I'll just give one quick example that have just came to my attention the other day, and that is that several major accounts have been banned or temporarily banned from Twitter, including I think Mark Levin, who is of course a major radio talk show host, because they mentioned the name of this guy who was was involved with several shootings in Kenosha. You know who I'm talking about. I don't even know if I want to mention his name because my show will be banned, but we don't need to mention it. Everyone listening to this knows what I mean, who I mean. And I guess that they've decided over there that this whole situation will be portrayed in a certain way, and that anyone who disagrees is going to be airbrushed off the page of opinion, including apparently his own lawyer.
That's true. They censored his own lawyer, Lynn Wood. Not a very smart move on Twitter's part, I'd say. I mean, Lynn Wood's won multi-million dollar settlements from huge companies, bigger than Twitter, in fact. So we'll see what happens there. We also saw multiple journalists, as you said, getting suspended for supporting or appearing to defend the shooter. Who, there were plenty of videos seeming to show that he acted in self-defense. That's a matter for the courts, of course, to decide. But these social media companies are prejudging the courts. They're sort of convicting this guy before he's had a fair trial. And Facebook is doing the same thing. They said they've classified this event as a mass shooting and will ban anyone or delete any post that appears to praise it. And, I'm working on an article right now listing all the left-wing mass murderers who are perfectly fine on Facebook. They have all sorts of support pages for far-left terrorists from the 1970s. They're all over Facebook. So we'll be coming out with that
Good,
shortly.
very, very current. And also, I mean, they portrayed this person as a white supremacist, and there's no evidence of that at all. He actually, the two people that were killed in this were both white, and they've decided in advance the nature of this whole thing. There's not going to be any discussion about it. I think we've learned from experience, at least I have, going back really, for me, the awakening was the Trayvon Martin situation. That oftentimes these cases are not exactly as they first appear or as they're first reported in the media, that there are more nuance to them, that there's more factors involved, that you have to sift and weigh all the evidence before you get involved in emotional and hysterical conclusions. And yet they seem to themselves be only allowing the more hysterical and incendiary conclusions to be promulgated on the social media. It shows essentially that this, like a lot of these other things, going back to Trayvon Martin, being used for political purposes, being used to, in this case, stop President Trump, which of course is the very subject of your book, and which is the title of your book, actually. What so talk about a little bit about that. I mean, how bad is it going to get for anyone who supports the president to have a presence in social media, especially as we get closer to the election?
Well, as I was researching my book, I was talking to insiders in Google and Facebook, all these tech giants. There are still a few conservative employees there who disagree with the direction of the company. Of course, they can't say that openly inside the company because they get mobbed and eventually fired, like James Damore and Palmer Luckey. But they all say similar things. There was an absolute panic inside Facebook, inside Google after the election. And that all of these new departments that were set up inside these companies, so-called to manage so-called election integrity or fake news or misinformation or conspiracy theories. First of all, they all started appearing right after the election. Quite a coincidence there. But also, my sources say the people who rushed to join those departments were all the most anti-Trump people at the company. And that's why we've seen over the past 4 years this gradual purge of Trump supporters. Most recently, I think was a huge story, the banning of the QAnon movement from multiple platforms. And you can, agree with them or disagree with them as much as you want, but one of their defining features is that they are all Trump supporters. So that
That's
was
right.
one thing to ban a massive segment of Trump support.
That's right. I mean, look, I don't know a lot about QAnon, and I've actually tried to get information about them, and it's kind of hard. They're sort of sketchy, so I don't have a strong opinion. But my general sense is that they're Trump supporters, and that they believe that there's a problem with pedophilia and satanic ritual at very high levels of power, which may or may not be true. But the point is, it's a legitimate thing to bring up. It's something that our media should be investigating at least. I personally think that it is true, but I don't have any hard evidence to back that. But either way, there is certainly nothing wrong in a free society to investigate these kinds of corruptions and to have that banned. They're not. I don't think that they're specifically pointing a finger at any person other than maybe Jeffrey Epstein, of course, but which is already
Indeed.
well known.
And pedophiles at the highest level of society, there's a perfect example. I don't think that's really a conspiracy theory. But if we're talking
Yeah.
about conspiracy theories, the left have been talking about Vladimir Putin blackmailing Trump with explicit tapes or whatever, with absolutely no evidence. These crazy, wild theories propagated by the likes of Rachel Maddow and other people, they've never been censored or banned by social media platforms. In fact, the social media platforms promote those networks. So once again, one side is allowed to have their conspiracy theories, whereas the other side, even if they're simply accused of conspiracy theories, they'll get banned. But we're quite aware of all the Trump supporters who regularly get banned from these platforms. We've seen it out in the open. But what my book delves into as well is the stuff we don't see, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes with the algorithms and the covert censorship, which in my view is even more dangerous than the overt bannings and so on, because we're going to be in a future very quickly where everything we post to the internet is going to be scanned by these computer algorithms that decide whether our posts are going to go in, the top of search results, at the top of people's feeds, whether people actually get to see them, or whether they'll just be buried without our knowledge, made impossible to find. And, these tech companies are suppressing the conservative movement as it exists today. But what they're also doing is preventing the conservative movement from going viral and preventing new offshoots, new movements from forming. These companies are experts in how information spreads and goes viral, which means they're also experts in how to stop information spreading and going viral. So we're moving towards a situation where one side of the political aisle will have access to that vast amount of informational power, and the other side will simply be just completely cut off from each other, not able to organize, not able to spread its message, not able to be heard.
Yes. So, Allum, you have a lot of inside information about this. Your book is Deleted: Big Tech's Battle to Erase the Trump Movement and Steal the Election. You go into how this entire agenda was launched right after the election of 2016 as a way to make sure it never happens again. That they are essentially, if not outright, colluding with each other to make sure that they coordinate. And I'm not saying they're sitting in some smoke-filled room somewhere, but they don't need to. They all think alike anyway, and that they're using their vast and international and pervasive apparatus to promote one particular political agenda and to suppress another. And you mentioned the business of the algorithms burying people. Making sure that something doesn't go viral. I mean, I understand. I've been told by people who know the situation that this is what's happened to my site and my YouTube channel and my platforms, and I've seen it in terms of people who have subscribed to me who suddenly find that they're no longer subscribed, and people who've been knocked off of my list of friends and all that, and or they don't get my show, it just doesn't go to their box. And I think that this has happened also apparently to Breitbart, which has lost I think about 30% of its subscribers, and which was and still is huge in terms of influence online. And so we're not talking here about some low level person like me. We're talking about big entities like Breitbart, like Mark Levin, like Newsmax, probably. I don't know. I mean, all the other more conservative sites.
Yeah, and another thing I would say is that, even conservative commentators who don't have a huge following right now, the question is, could they have had a huge following if there wasn't this censorship over the past 4 years? I think that's a question everyone has to be asking themselves.
Yes.
Breitbart is in a slightly better position because a lot of our visitors still type in www.breitbart.com into the web browser. They don't always go through a social network. But as you said, we've been suppressed as well. We released a story a few weeks ago, and actually it was last month. Sorry, but showing that uh, search visibility on the search terms Joe Biden and Biden, we get zero traffic from those search terms at the moment, which is insane. We're one of the most popular political websites on the internet, but Google is sending us no traffic from Joe Biden and Biden search terms. That just shows what their priority is, keeping negative links off searches for Joe Biden, so that when an undecided voter who wants to find out more about the candidates will see only positive stories from the mainstream media about Biden and only negative stories about Donald Trump.
Right, and I would imagine that they must be all in on this latest conspiracy theory, which is that Biden is not senile. There's no problem with his mental health. This whole thing was cooked up by the Ruskies, right?
Yeah, it was pretty much the same thing last time with Hillary Clinton's health problems. Google even was removing autocomplete suggestions for Hillary Clinton's health, even though vast numbers of people were searching for that. It wouldn't appear as a suggested search when you typed it into Google, whereas it would on Bing and Yahoo and DuckDuckGo. We saw a similar story just a few days ago with Black Lives Matter. If you type BLM is into Google, it won't show you any results, won't show you any suggested searches. If you type it into Bing or Yahoo or DuckDuckGo, you'll get, well, BLM is Marxist, BLM is a terrorist organization, BLM is criminal, and some positive search results, search suggestions as well. It just reflects what people are searching for. But Google, it's been completely expunged. So it just shows you how tightly controlled Google is, even compared to its Microsoft and Yahoo rivals.
And of course, Google controls, I think, at least 90% of the search market, probably more, probably like 97 or 98%. And so they've decided to rewrite history on BLM. We can't know who they are, what they are, anything about their background. There are sites that seem to coordinate as well, like Wikipedia, which is very left and which has really expunged anything that doesn't goose step to their point of view. They seem to be coordinating with financial institutions like PayPal to make sure that people who are conservative can't make money online. I mean, they can get dropped from PayPal. They can get their entire station literally dropped overnight for no reason. It's really a major purge in the tradition of the Soviet style purge, where you would have, people who were deemed as, quote, enemies of the state or enemies of the people simply removed and airbrushed literally off the pages of politics and history, not to be heard, to be completely marginalized. And we don't know exactly where they're going to do this. It's very arbitrary. It's done completely by fiat. It can be in any area. We know that they're doing it regarding the virus. You cannot mention the name of a particular drug, and we're not going to mention it, but you know which one I'm talking about, because for some reason that drug is not allowed. If you mention it, you'll lose your station, most likely. And why that is. I mean, we probably could have a discussion by use of euphemism in terms of what their agenda may be, but we can't really know because it's all very secretive and because it's all very arbitrary.
And there's no transparency. These companies are subject to no oversight whatsoever. In fact, they have more privileges than most normal companies. They're virtually immune from lawsuits if they wrongfully censor a channel or a account on Twitter or Facebook. They're immune from defamation lawsuits as well. If Wikipedia smears you as a white nationalist or a Nazi, and that goes to the top of Google, you can't sue Google or Wikipedia for that because of Section 230, the special legal privilege that they have that they got from Congress in the 1990s. But I will say, all of this is happening. You see all of society, all of the economy even being weaponized against the Trump movement. Banking companies, PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, Silicon Valley, the press, even the judiciary. And this is when they don't have the White House. If Joe Biden gets into the White House, they're going to use all that power to pressure these companies even more to ban even more Trump supporters and right wingers. So
Oh
if
yeah,
you want this
sure.
stuff to stop, it's been a slow process to get change happening in the White House. But if there's any hope of reigning in Silicon Valley, Donald Trump has to win a second term.
No, I mean, if you think it's ugly now, just forget about it. If they win, I mean, it's going to be like a, the post. It might not as bad. I'm using a little hyperbole here, but it's like after the Bolshevik Revolution. It's just going to be a complete and total purge of anyone who doesn't goose step to their, socialistic, not national socialistic. I'm being polite there. A point of view. Now, Alam, what can we do about this right now in terms of people who are of an alternative opinion to the establishment government, to the governing authority, I should say? What can we do? Are there social networks we can go to? I know I've been doing posting on Parler. I don't know how big that is, but where can we go and what can we do at this point, if anything?
Parler and Gab both have very impressively sized audience. I'd certainly recommend having a presence on there. I wouldn't recommend leaving the existing platforms altogether, especially this close to an election, because then you're essentially self-censoring yourself. You're almost banning yourself from these platforms, whereas you do need to go out there and try and reach, especially if you're campaigning for a political party, then you need to go on those platforms to reach undecided voters. And the point about undecided voters, that's the real risk here, because conservatives or Trump supporters, they may not be manipulated by the bias of big tech companies. They may know how to find both sides of the story, but an undecided voter who may not follow politics on a regular basis may be less aware of big tech bias. When they go and search for information about the candidates, they're just going to be met with a stream of propaganda from these tech companies in their search results and in the trending bar, you name it. So the challenge, I think, for Trump supporters is how do you reach those undecided voters without going through the social networks? Because we know those social networks will not let your message get out of the echo chamber. It won't let those messages reach those critical voting groups. So I think Trump supporters have to go old school. They have to go knocking on doors. They have to find the undecided voters, in the actual physical world, and make sure they have a balanced perspective ahead of the election and not just relying on these extremely biased tech platforms.
Is there anything we can do on the extremely biased tech platforms to coordinate with each other, to link with each other, to use some sort of a method of creating a critical mass that where we could just keep popping up everywhere that they turn, like like a whack-a-mole. Every time they ban one, it pops up somewhere else. I mean, I would think that there might be something we could all do informally. Anyone who cares about free speech, including many liberals, and certainly independents, to just make sure that there's a fair hearing. I mean, is there anything we could do technically that might do an end run around this agenda?
Well, there are still ways of communicating on the internet that don't go through these platforms like email lists and so on. But it's going to be. I think it's still possible to get the message out on these platforms to an extent. It's much diminished compared to 2016. It won't have the same effect, but it's still just about possible. It will grow increasingly difficult unless these tech companies are reined in by regulations or changes to the law. Because what's going to happen is, over the past 4 years, it's been humans making a lot of these censorship decisions, but those humans are training AIs and algorithms that will be able to essentially, I mean, the future is going to be everyone's post is going to be scanned in advance by these AI algorithms, and that'll determine where they go. So there really will be no escaping it. It's not simply a case of avoiding a human censor. It's avoiding the
Right.
algorithm, which will be scanning absolutely everything.
It's artificial intelligence taking over, robotic control, all programmed in advance. And is there anything that our Congress people can do? I mean, where are the Republicans in the U.S. Senate?
Well, this is the thing. This is the way to fix the problem long term. Conservatives have to make their voice heard in the party, and they have to have zero tolerance for conservatives and Republican senators and congressmen who take money from these tech platforms, who echo their talking points about, we can't amend Section 230, that's interfering in the free market. Very interesting argument, seeing as Section 230 is a government handout. So I think, the conservative grassroots need to have as little tolerance of Republicans working with Google and Facebook and these other tech companies as they do for Republicans working with Planned Parenthood. Maybe even less tolerance, because this is a critical threat to both the conservative movement and to American democracy as a whole. That we're barreling towards this future where a few unaccountable tech giants will be able to manipulate elections and control the flow of political information on an unprecedented scale.
Oh, it's really troubling, and they certainly have their hooks into the Republican side as well, with their donations and with their threats to remove them from the internet. They want to still get their big fat face up on the television, and up on the, they don't want to be marginalized and expunged either. They're political as anyone, so it seems like they really have a tight ring around this future control. Allum, your book is really out there as a stick of dynamite. As a sort of a poking of the hornet's nest. I hope that you're able to get it out there in a sufficient force that will reach the right people. I wish that you could get it into the hands of every congressman, including liberals. I mean, nobody. I mean, there are a lot of people out there, liberal and conservative, who don't want to see this kind of authoritarian control over our means of communication. I would hope.
Yeah, well, we'll try and reach them.
How do people get your book, Allum?
If you go on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, if you don't rely on Amazon, I totally understand it. Just search for a hashtag deleted big text battle to erase the Trump movement and steal the election.
Very good. Pleasure as always, Allum. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Charles.
All right. Take care.